So I now request comments, questions. Please try to be brief so that we can have many rounds of questions. And please introduce yourself when you ask a question or make a comment.
Yes. Three presentations.
Please introduce
My
yourself.
name is Chandraya, working as an assistant professor in G.V. Pant Social Science Institute, Allahabad. I got a sense after listening to three presentations. The crisis in higher education revolve around the committees of the university, governing bodies, selection of the principals, vice chancellor, and casualization of the teachers and workers, and the external impact, whether it is globalization, liberalization, and so on and so forth. These are very, very important to debate, discuss, and take a positive action. But limiting crisis to these factors is inadequate to understand the complex relations that undergo. Crisis for the, I will be more direct. Crisis for today, crisis reached to the upper caste who are there in higher education. For Dalits, Adivasis, to some extent OBCs, crisis there but from the beginning. Today you are realizing now crisis reached to your stage. Oh, suddenly you are not shocking. Crisis is there from the beginning. So this is one first point. The second point is there is a rupture in higher education because the new entry of the Dalits and Adivasis and OBCs come with the new questions, new experience that qualitatively create a different kind of environment in higher education, both in the classroom and outside the classroom. And it actually always have a greater ability to negate the already hegemonized practices, both in the research agenda, classroom, and in campus. That rupture one has to capture. That rupture always resulted in terms of suicide. There are series of suicides. If you don't talk about suicide, I don't think so what kind of crisis you are trying to capture. There is a 1 month back there are two suicides in IFLU, in Central University. There are a series of suicides in IITs. If you see the statistics of the suicide, you come to know that what kind of crisis really happening. But this is one of the points. And 2 points I make and say. See, there are structural things. In University of Hyderabad, Ambedkar values are kept in SC/ST cell. And student leaders from the Dalit community organization, they have reported more than 20 times to the librarian and vice chancellor and saying that why don't you keep in the open session so that it will be accessible to everyone. Why only in the SC/ST cell? As if it is meant for the SC/STs. You keep Gandhi values in open session so that it will be accessible to everybody, and you keep Ambedkar values in SC/ST cell as if it is meant for SC/STs. My point is, there is a problem. Structurally, there is a problem. Are we able to see that actually? And when there was a debate in JNU on the beef and pork, and absolutely after 30-40 years of the JNU leftist history, we have seen a strong opposition to those initiations. That it is indirectly comment on the left activism in JNU. What kind of cultural democratic space that you have created for 30 years? Why there was a strong opposition within the JNU? So somewhere there is, in a fundamental level, there is a wrong with the very, understanding of the strength, activism, either this length or whatever. I think these are some of the things which are very important to understand the crisis in higher education. So if you don't, please take into consideration, I think it will be inadequate.
Okay, thank you. A request, if the comments can be brief so that we can have more rounds. But anyways, there are important things, please carry on. Sir,
I'm Amita Baraskar. I used to teach in Delhi University, but now I'm a sociologist at the Institute of Economic Growth. It was actually very curious hearing Mukul Manglik's presentation and Sanjay Kumar's, because they seem to have completely different visions of the university. So I was just trying to sort them out and see if there was some way of reconciling them in my head, and I thought I'd offer these comments as, one way forward. Because, Sanjay, you began by saying that neoliberal political economy makes it impossible to have a liberal university. And to me that is so dismal. I mean, we might as well just go home, what are we then trying to do? And on the other hand, Mukul's view was about the university as a place of learning, learning to be human, and and learning to question and so forth. And while the university has been that, I think the tension in our universities has always been between the fact that, on the one hand, you're in a waiting room to join the white-collar, worker bees. On the other hand, it's also been about freedom. On the one hand, it's been about merit and, expanding competence and so on. But on the other hand, it's also been about getting that thappa, that credential that, you have a BA degree from DU and that's better than a BA degree from Bhagatpur and so on. So there's a kind of, social value which is attached to it in what is a commodified environment outside the university and within it as well. But along with that, there is the aspect of inclusion and upward mobility, and the university as increasing opportunities for more and more students through reservations, through other forms of recognition. The university is not a place of individualism. When I think of who my best friends are, they're all people I went to university with or to school with. So there are, I think, the networks that Sanjay you spoke of are important not only as ways of elites to consolidate their own power, but it's also networks where Dalit students, other students, new socialist initiatives, people, things like that happen in universities. So let's recognize that there's a tension between the neoliberal political economy within which universities operate. The neoliberal political economy is within the heart of the university today, but also that we continue to struggle within that as much as we can, and that's not something which is new. Because sometimes I get the feeling that suddenly now Utah is being talked about as if, it's some heroic force. I mean, many of us who've been in Delhi University know that Utah has been, well, anyway,
not a time.
But what I do want to say is that free critical thinking cannot happen outside the universities if those outside spaces are equally colonized by neoliberal political economy. So it's not about within and outside the university. I think wherever we are, we have to try and struggle to keep the university alive, to fight against the kind of, I think, very aggressive and brutal transformation that's happening. But we have to keep alive the idea of that legitimizing ideology of the university as a liberal space, where people can still think and relate to each other and learn something which is more than about, I think, sheer instrumental, something that's of instrumental value alone in life and in the workplace. So I just want to say that I think we have to keep hoping for the university as a place of struggle. So let's not give that up.
Mukul saying that you want to respond to this question, then we can take more to these two questions, then we can take
Yeah, to Chandraya and also to Amita, I just like to, maybe I was reading too fast, but one of the things I began by saying, so that I don't end up sort of romanticizing Delhi University before the 3 years, was precisely that, that constraints to the exercise of everyday freedom and limitations on full democratic functioning. So I have never thought of Delhi University or of college or of teaching as if everything's been fine until 3 years ago. So I have thought of it always as a place of tension. But I think what has become different is that I feel that up to about 3 years ago, or 2 years ago or now, Delhi University, precisely because of that tension, I mean, for many of us, I think, was a place of promise. Somewhere there were possibilities. And that I think is, my response is also connected to what Chandraya had asked, that I'm not trying to suggest, I don't believe that the crisis, in fact I'm not addressing the crisis. I don't think the crisis begins 3 years ago. I don't think the crisis begins even with the coming into existence of neoliberal sort of economics and politics. I think there has been a crisis in different ways in Delhi, in the higher education sector in the university. Which is precisely why it has been a site of tension. So whether we are talking about JNU or whether we are talking about different colleges or the faculties in Delhi University, I think they have been, from the word go, they have been places of tension and also of different kinds of crises, some of which you referred to. So I'm not trying to say that the crisis begins now or the crisis only has this political aspect. At the same time, what I feel is when I'm saying that it's been a site of tension and a place of promise, what I meant was that somewhere there was a possibility of acknowledging, confronting, working through these crises, and that possibility is because of the emerging political culture and the signals that are going out from the top. That is becoming more and more difficult. So that's the simple point I was trying to make. It is still for me, I'm not trying to say that it's not a place which I want to give up on. But at the same time, I think it's becoming that much more difficult to have the freedom and have the courage to be able to go out onto the streets or be in the classroom or while talking in the staff room, to be able to say what you want to say and what you think needs to be said. It's just becoming more and more difficult. So I'm certainly not trying to say that the crisis begins now or the crisis begins today. But I think something has changed in the last 2 or 3 years. And it's just that change that I was trying to focus on. And as far as hope is concerned, the hope is there, but I think that hope is the desperation for many of us, I think, teachers. I'm not speaking on anyone's behalf, but certainly for me, I think the hope is really hanging on a much more slender thread. And I actually feel that this morning, for example, I was talking to you about this, it is something that I have not experienced. I'm just sharing something which is a very subjective experience perhaps, but I think it goes beyond me somewhere. And that is that what's actually happened is that I've always believed that as teachers and students or at university, the one thing that we have which nobody can take away from us is our ideas and the power of the word. And somewhere I have begun to feel that what is the use of going on talking. In fact, this morning I got up and felt कि यार क्या बोलना है, मतलब यही बात कर करके कह कर, and the university is going on doing, the admin, not the university, but the university administration is going on doing exactly what they want to do. They are going on creating a political atmosphere that is making it impossible. It is just laced with fear. They're creating a prison out of the university. And you somewhere begin to doubt the power of the word itself. While in principle you recognize it, but in reality you begin to doubt it. And you get up in the morning and you feel that you can't speak. Not because somebody is standing there in your room in the morning telling you not to speak, but somewhere there's a lock. It's a curfew. I mean, that's the sense in which it's operating. And I think this is something which is new. So, I mean, if there were tensions, for example, I agree completely that, for example, when you're saying, Chandraya, that why should the Ambedkar volumes be only in the Dalit cell? Absolutely. But I think it's very important for us to actually come together and just fight for the preservation of whatever democratic freedoms and liberties and rights that we've had, so that we can go on taking up these issues. So that when the beef issue comes up in JNU, at least it could be talked about. I don't know exactly what happened, but I know it was very shocking that whatever happened in JNU, but JNU is also not going to remain immune to the sort of juggernaut of liberties being and freedoms being curtailed and curbed. But we have to find ways in which we are able to hang on to these, sort of come together and hang on to these liberties. We may disagree about all kinds of issues, about the foyer, about the semester, it doesn't matter. But I mean, these disagreements actually matter only to the extent that we can freely talk about them and then arrive at something. We are not able to talk about them anymore. We are simply being told this has to be done. And it just makes you feel totally powerless and that the word has no meaning anymore.
Please be sort of brief. Maduresh was first, then Maduresh. Maduresh, then
My name is Maduresh and I'm with a group called National Alliance of People's Movements. I used to be in the university. I did my undergrad from their university. Just wanted to say the questions, I think, what a friend raised there, I wanted to raise exactly those kinds of, there was no golden era before something which existed. But I think my question is that when the citadels around the university, which in general in the society, when the neoliberal reform started, and they were crumbling, the Tuta as a very regressive union, fought for its interest, unlike many of the, teachers union or the academic community union around the country, the pays kept going up, 6th commission or 7th or whatever. At that particular time, meaning by, I don't know, maybe there were initially in the 90s when it all started, there was some kind of solidarity and in general connection with the social movements across the country. There was a lot of debate coming together of the academic community, and even if it was a tiny minority, which still exists. So I'm not saying it's a personal thing, but I'm just talking in general about meaning by larger community. And in past 10 years, meaning by when attacks of neoliberal capital in the rural hinterland or on the urban, those who live in the urban margins has increased, we see there is a greater, meaning by distance, which has been going on from the universities. So the kind of issues which are being debated, discussed outside, the attacks, they don't find any mentions. And perhaps in some way it's a good news that the attacks are happening more clearly within the university, so that you actually start feeling the pinch of it. The contractualization which has been going on across the country when it comes to the labor, to the unorganized sector, all of that perhaps was somewhere that it's not affecting us yet. So I'm not making a point that it's good that it's happening, but I think something I'm hoping that this tiny minority which was there within the university community which has been fighting to preserve those rights will now actually increase. So hopefully I see there is a hope there, that the moments of these crises will perhaps forge a new seed of hope and bring more and more people together to fight for them. Thank you.
Question particularly to Sanjay. Look, the way you have, in the later part of your talk, put this whole idea of corporatization of the university, I'm sure there is a corporatization and that's coming directly from Knowledge Commission and everything. But what I have my hesitations and problems are with that is, look, corporatization also has certain standards. The corporatization doesn't make syllabus in 2 weeks. I mean, polytechnicization also doesn't do that. I mean, there have been excellent models of polytechnic from Germany onwards. Okay, so even instrumental education has certain standards. This is completely mindlessness, and I do not think it is coming out of any stupidity. So obviously, I'm trying to understand the reasons for it. Okay, and I go back to the same neoliberalism. And see, one way of looking at neoliberalism is the whole idea of corporatization structures. And you see, the point that Amita took on. You see, corporatization also creates its own incentives. But what we are finding here are not incentives at all. These are entirely, what kind of systems of education are there that you put 30 surveillance cameras in colleges, you take a complete video pictures of people in demonstration and then actually go and tell principals to suspend them. Okay, these are being done day-to-day basis. So this kind of fear being spread. This is not a corporatization, normal corporatization model. Okay. Now, my point is, the other aspect of neoliberal thing which we have seen country after country, that you demolish public institutions deliberately by making those loss-making sectors. You've done this to our public sector. I mean, the British Rail, Air India, even so many examples, and each of them have labor consequences. Okay, and so this is, I think, a very well-defined model of actually destroy a public institution, which is actually providing a low-cost education to a lot of people, and then these whole kind of paradigms of private education. Let us not think that, and it is also linked to your model, that look, we are creating, should I say, a labor of a certain kind of sophistication. We are also creating absolutely rudimentary labor, which is anyway not coming from university. But I don't think we're creating a model where no critical knowledge will be left in the country. I don't think the elites of this country are so bankrupt. The critical knowledge will be done in Shiv Nadar University. People can pay there and do extremely good courses and extremely good faculty in Shiv Nadar University, pay 5 lakhs and do critical knowledge and critical philosophy, which is not taught in universities. Okay, so this is the model. So let us understand what is going on, and we can't just stop at corporatization. There's something much more deeper and much more sinister about it.
Rajiv?
My name is Rajiv and I work with Rosa Luxembourg Stiftung New Delhi office. I was just wondering, because Delhi has close to around, because I was attending one conference on education in South Asia University recently, and there one executive member of DUTA, I think, Abbas Dev Habib, she was talking, and she was comparing the teachers movement of the Delhi University with the students movement of JNU. That JNU is known for its student movement, now DU is known for its teachers movement. So, and Delhi University has close to around 10,000 faculty members. Somebody can correct if I am wrong. And there has been talks here about that, I think you were referring that JNU also will not be immune for a long time. So one can understand that there has to be solidarities and connections with other teachers' unions across the country. But I have not attended this session fully, so I might have missed the point. But still I will put this question here, that have there been any thoughts regarding any connections, any solidarities with the labor movement, or the teaching labor considers itself as something different? Because not very far from Delhi University is a place called Gurgaon, where you can, you must have read and heard about the Maruti workers' struggle in the last couple of years. So I just want to draw the attention of the panel to that. I think Madhuresh was pointing some in that direction. So that is.
It's really.
Please, there was a person here. Can I request? Please. Or maybe if it is a brief question, please. But please, just.
My name is Anjaya. I am a PhD student of JNU. It's really wonderful to listen to all the speakers, particularly Mukul Banglik. I am reminded of the power of the university students. When I recollect an incident in 1999 when BJP was in power, please remember BJP has appointed a commission to review the constitution. And in the University of Hyderabad, the student organizations have protested against Venkatachalaya and his team because they were there. And immediately, because one of the terms of reference of the commission was actually to change the basic structure of the constitution itself. And when the students protested very strongly there, then immediately Venkatachalaya made a statement, assured the students that we will not tamper, we will not actually spoil the basic structure of the constitution. My point is actually, come to JNU. My friend has raised the power of the student activism, the power of the teachers' activism of Delhi University. How many of you know of the total number of teachers in JNU? 432. I have an RTI. Out of 432, 22.5% SC/ST should have been 98 plus. You will be surprised to know there are hardly 40 members. For the last 1950 reservation came for SC/STs. Were OBCs, reservation came in 2006. Out of 436, after 2006 there were a number of recruitments. Out of 436, 34 or 36, I'm forgetting the exact, 34, only 2 OBCs. For a population of 52% of this country, according to the Mandal Commission, my point is the audacity with which the government of India is going ahead with implementing neoliberal economic policies, without worrying the fear that would come from a progressive university like JNU or Delhi University or Hyderabad University. They know that because these students in universities like JNU are completely elitistic in nature. Let me remind, both the teachers and the students are completely elitistic. And the governments of India know that the students' opposition is very small, very weak, because the majority people's participation is not there. Now, how do you expect to strengthen the opposition to the audacity, the manner in which the government of India is implementing, and it will certainly go ahead, So, how do you, this is my question to the teachers and this left-wing activism of the university, how to strengthen the opposition and resistance.
Okay, you made your point, please. Yeah. Please try to brief. We'll take only last.
My question is to, my name is Ambedkar, I'm at the Center for the Study of Social Systems. My question is to Sanjay sir. So what do you think about the think tanks and how it is affecting the critical scholarship in universities? Because you said the universities will now start producing knowledgeable labor. So how do you see that the think tanks substituting the critical scholarship?
Sir, Okay. I'm Prabhu Mahapatra. I teach history in the university. I was just first is, of course, Amita has already pointed out that there is. I don't think there is any difference in the way you have structured it. But the fact of the tension is a central point of that idea that resistance always has to be outside is wrong. It must be built from within. That is always there. The space has to be created and claimed. The question, there is also a certain neoliberalism also is not one-sided. It has a lot of tension within it. You have pointed out it is basically one way of handling tension is through delegation or kind of decentralization, privatization, several ways. But there are tensions within neoliberalism, and we see it in crisis after crisis which neoliberalism itself is facing. Let me just point out that possibly one of the reasons these reforms are being put at such high speed, apart from the privatization needs, is possibly exactly a kind of representational crisis which is happening because of massive entry for the first time in the last 3 years with the expansion, OBC expansion. In the sense, it has actually shaken not just the elites, but shaken the structure of teaching everywhere. So what is being tried out is, on the one hand, to give tokenistic structure, representational to allow access, on the other hand, to create new forms of screening. So the 4-year course, the semesterization is actually can be seen as a response to exactly one hand of what neoliberal need for market. We need more educated, skilled labor, 15% to 30%, we have to put them up. That requires expansion. I think this is peculiarly, and as you can easily make out, it's designed for creation of a hugely low-level labor market. So you have 2-year exits and all. So it's a one way of saying, okay, we allow the expansion, but we will control it through this means. I would suggest that this is whether it's I think it's well thought out. I'm sure it's not a conspiracy, it's a well thought out strategy in order to both to create greater screening, and it's a response to the massification of education in a new form. I would suggest that this is what's happening.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Apurva. I'm a master's student from Delhi University. I just thought that on a discussion on universities, I think it's very important, and I would revisit some response from the speakers on the question of, which is, very central and what links the university to the world outside, the world within, is the question of knowledge production, which is something Chandra slightly pointed out in the way it is controlled and the newer forms in which it is being controlled. I mean, these are dark areas of academics, publication, etc. we don't talk about, but I think it's very important to raise these questions here when we talk about the university. The central, very important work that we do day in, day out is production of knowledge. How we make it exclusive, how we are making it more and more exclusive, what is it make? And I mean, there are ways in which it is always, there are questions in which it's exclusive to men, exclusive to, certain castes, etc. And what are the new ways in which it is being made more exclusive? I would just want some response from the speakers.
I'm Akash Bhattacharya. I'm a MPhil student of history at JNU and member of youth organization Krantikari Naujawan Sabha. Drawing upon some of the discussions that have happened over the past half an hour, couple of things I want to point out. That when we are talking about the crisis in education, we are talking primarily a language of loss, that we are losing certain spaces that we have. We are not talking the language of difference. Like there was crisis in the education system before, and there is crisis now. The nature of the crisis has changed. And the crisis is not homogeneous. Different sections of the society face different kinds of crisis. There are sections which never faced a crisis before but is facing now. There are sections, like Chandra pointed out, have always faced a crisis. For them, the nature of the crisis is different. And I think talking in the language of loss leads us to seeing this battle as primarily a defensive battle. There is no way to defend certain spaces. But it can become an assertive battle only when we connect the struggles in the realm of education to struggles in other areas of society against neoliberalism. Otherwise, we end up looking for solutions to the crisis in education within the university. Like there was a panel discussion, I think, in the morning, where the discussions primarily centered on what kind of resistances can be built within the university. The fact is today the resistances can't be built simply within the university. So we have to focus on these linkages as much as possible.
Very short. Yeah, just one. I just wanted to know the responses of the students in Delhi University about these reforms which are going on. They're very dictatorial reforms.
My name is Vivek. I work in the Delhi University. I'm a contractual laborer. But just to turn, I think connecting most of the things that have been already said and to turn the agenda on its head, being a student of education and critical pedagogy itself, where is the self-reflexivity when we're talking about the university space? Self-reflexivity of the teachers itself. Having read a lot of critical literature that talks about collectivization, it's really disheartening to see that when such changes are happening, faculty members within a big university such as the University of Delhi is not able to collectivize. And this is a really disheartening thing. And when we're talking about it, where is the question of questioning ourselves? I think that's another important question that we have.
Universities, I mentioned, are the last ones besides the defense forces to implement affirmative action within that. So that's the nature of universities in India. They are, we're talking about JNU, Delhi University, which are still central and in big cities. Think about smaller state universities. My friend in Gorakhpur tell me there is a Rajput lobby in the faculty, there's a Brahmin lobby in the faculty. And they keep on fighting on themselves. And that's where majority of the students in this country study, in fact. In the small colleges and universities in smaller towns and places. And think about, what kind of casteist things go on. And about discrimination against Dalit students, think about IITs and IIMs. There's serious problem because the kind of society we have, which has never really gotten rid of its caste colors. And we are Ambedkar when he was presenting the constitution, he said we are trying to sow a seed of democracy in an inherently undemocratic society. That persists till now. Our society, its values, its cultures, they are completely undemocratic. I don't have any illusion about it. So that democratization of society, which to some extent might have happened in Western countries, has not happened at all in India. So we are talking about a society, which then it's of course, these things come into a university sphere also. But you mentioned that, when the Dalits are entering the university sphere, new issues are arising. I will respond in the situation of country like this, that might be happening in very few universities like JNU, Hyderabad University, to some extent Delhi University. Majority of the students in this country, in fact, are now going to private universities. And they are basically market controlled, and they have no agenda of, bringing in diversity into their class or curriculum, etc. Now the question about death of university and the dismal picture, I said that, if you look at the history of the humanity, the most of the critical thinking has happened outside university. And why should we even university-centric that, this thing has to persist? It need not persist. Universities may get just integrated into the system so much that they don't allow any space for critical thinking. That's possible. I don't have any romantic attachment to university as such. Let them go to hell. Don't bother us. A lot of critical thinking is going to happen outside university framework. That's what I'm saying. It might be the framework of, popular struggles. It might be independent intellectuals. But that's what has happened in the history of humanity anyway. I mean, Newton was not part of Cambridge University. He studied there, but most of his work came outside university life. Einstein, the same thing happened. So why should we even worried about it that, well, Einstein, when he joined the Princeton Advanced Institute, he was not part of university faculty. He was attached to university, was not part of university faculty. Even in Germany, he was attached to Max Planck Institute, not to university. So there are, I would say that we should not be university-centric in that sense that university is the privileged space of intellectual production in society. I would say there will be many, many other places, and university just happened to be in the small liberal phase, to be the phase in which most of the critical thinking came through universities, but now perhaps is a time in which they might occur outside the university. About the networks, see, the kind of networks they arise in society depend on the kind of society it is. I told you about the Rajputs and the Brahmins networks in Gorakhpur University, for instance. So that's one thing you have to think about, what is the character of these networks. And the black, for instance, academicians will tell you about the network of academics in US universities, perhaps very, racist. They might say that. So there is a character to every network. What you need to do is that whether that network is self-reflexively open and democratic. My understanding is that academic networks perhaps do not show that reflexivity. That's my understanding. I may be wrong here. And of course that requires a much deeper study. But as far as the Bourdieu studies of Homo academics is concerned, of French university life, in writing, I think he was basically had the data from 1980s. His idea was it's an exclusion network. Once you get into it, you get a privileged position, and there's a kind of very strong barrier from entering into it. So it's not a very open network. So that's the comment about the networks. One of the questions which, Madhuresh, I agree with you, of course. One of the things, one of the ways university has broken teacher strikes is to say that we'll cut your salaries. And I was surprised that, after 6-pay commission, teachers are getting a lot of money compared to what average daily wage laborer gets. But somehow, even a single day salary is something people are not prepared to give up. And that's a tool, university has used in breaking strikes again and again. So yes, there is a problem with the teaching profession. In fact, I would call, one of the articles you wrote from Critique, the death of a noble profession. Death of a noble profession. College teaching, university teaching, the way majority of the, I see around, think about this, University Academic Council has how many, 60 members? No, 80 members. These are all tenured professors, established academically. None of them have a guts to say something of the Vice Chancellor. You ask why? What kind of people are they? They're simply terrorists. As simple as that. They are worried more about, their next grant, about, where they can have next trip and things like that. So that's the nature of the profession, and let's accept the fact, rather than still tagging along, some, what I think, I may be wrong, some romantic tags that it's still noble profession. It's no longer a noble profession. If you look at the ad hoc teachers and the guest teachers, the way they're teaching, the conditions, working conditions, well, the working conditions generate a kind of situation in which you try to work within and you try to modify your way of thinking according to those. So now you have in universities, the guest lecturer gets 1,000 rupees per hour, and you might find the guest lecturer teaching in 5 different colleges. He or she doesn't get attached to any particular college as a member of a college community. So something like which Mukul said, that becomes impossible. And that becomes their way of life then. It's a kind of corporatization of teaching profession. Pretty much like, the private tuitions and coaching centers are doing. So that is also percolating in that way. So I don't think we should romanticize, in my at least, any such notions. Now, corporatization, Rajiv had said, yes, corporatization has different standards in different societies. Our Indian bourgeois is anti-social. It's corrupt. Okay? If you think of, for instance, the bourgeoisie of other countries, which have very strong collective rules of dealing, as compared to them, our Indian bourgeoisie is extremely corrupt. So you get the capitalism of the nature from the society it is coming from. Okay? So yes, you're right. The corporatization has one image of efficiency and things like that. In India, we have a different kind of corporatization. We have seen our banks are how they are corruptly dealing with black money. You have seen our big capitalists dealing with black money. And our education CEOs will also deal with practices which perhaps will not agree with your ideal model of corporatization. But that's what you got. So I don't think it's, there is a direct conflict with the idea of corporatization and demolish public institutions. Yes, definitely there is an effort to privatize. Definitely, no doubt about that. In fact, majority of the expansion in the education sector is occurring in the private universities. But the state now, the capitalist state, the state which represents the overall interest of capital, that has also expanded in a big way. I mean, the 11th plan had increased the funding on education 3 times. So from the planned fund, it became 7% to 20%, which is, this is what's mentioned in National Knowledge Commission. I don't have the actual data, but that is what is mentioned. So if you look at higher education in India, if you look at the expansion of IITs, IMMs, IASRT, ISRERC and central universities, there is a big thrust in investment in education from the state also. And in fact, there is a migration of teachers from places like the university to these institutions. So it's not that the state is completely withdrawing. It's right that the sector is expanding very fast, and major share is going to private institutions, but state is also investing in a big way in public institutions in India. There was a question about think tanks and leading also the private universities. See, think tanks and the private universities, given the structure of our society is, given the very strong linkages with the capitalist class and the way its culture and things like that, I do not think they will be the centers of free critical thinking. You have a history of the think tanks, for instance, in the US, for instance, which, the think tank's job is generally to provide prescriptions, do analysis of the system within the system. On the other hand, the free critical thinking which I was referring to, and which for a certain time was happening in the university, which is inherently, critical look at the system as such. And I'm not so sure where established think tanks, the phrase think tanks, would be able to do that kind of job. But on the other hand, what I would suggest, there could be a collective of, intellectuals, for instance. Why do a collective of intellectuals has to be university-based? It doesn't have to be. So you can have other kinds of associations among radical thinkers or critical thinkers, which could do a different kind of free critical thinking, which will be outside the university framework, private university framework, or the so-called think tank framework. Other things that, yes, I don't have to, one can always keep on adding. Just one thing more, because Purvanand also has to say, is that we have to look at the education in university and its linkages outside the university system. So when the question was raised, how the privilege is created, my response would be that universities are linked up with privileges outside. Okay. And in the processes, and so they, in that sense, they become integral to the process of generating and reproducing privileges. Okay. For instance, if you look at the university system in India, IITs, IMMs, even Delhi University, even JMU has an entrance exam, you will see that for all these things you require some form of coaching in Delhi University. I know, even IITs, even physics honor students of the University of Delhi have started taking coaching classes for IIT entrance, JAM test and JES test. Okay? So, in a country like ours, there is an extreme amount of money spent outside the so-called formal system of education, and that immediately selects the people from the upper classes. And then, see, what university does, it does something very interesting. It takes a social privilege and gives it a tag of being objective and merit-based. So you enter the university on the basis of your caste privilege or your class privilege. When you leave out, you carry a merit tag. Okay, so that the tag of objectivity and the merit which university does, that is of course very important for capitalism and liberal capitalism to work, because the privilege has to be justified that these people who are sitting higher up, they have some inherent talent. Now what's the justification for that inherent talent? Because they were able to pass through these university structures. So universities, as you know, in that sense, they help recreate, reproduce privileges. And of course they have their own particular character of their privileges being tagged with merit and objective criteria.
Yeah, one is just a repetition, but I really feel the need to sort of assert and affirm this, that while accepting completely that universities are not the only sites for the transmission and production of knowledge, while accepting completely that colleges and Delhi University, I'm not talking for universities as a whole. I mean, I really want to, my whole thing has been rooted in my own experience of a particular college and of a particular university, and I am not trying to generalize about universities as a whole, but I do want to assert that colleges and universities in Delhi, while accepting that they have been there as producers of exclusivism and reproducing that, at the same time, I think the point I was making was that they have been sites of tension, and they continue to be sites of tension, and I think they've also been sites of the possible and of imagining worlds, of critical thinking and of the impossible. And this is something which has been part of the university atmosphere, it's been part of university life, it's been part of being a student at a university, it's being part of teaching at university, of being able to intervene and see the transformation of one's own and of students' imaginations and minds and the journey of the mind and the imagination. And I really value that, and I think even if it is defensive, it is something which we have to preserve, because this was the condition not only for critical thinking about one's own life, it was also the condition for imagining and reimagining and imagining a university afresh. This process has also been going on. And I think the point that what is really disturbing about what is happening at Delhi University is that this possibility, I'm not saying that this possibility will ever be completely closed, but compared to what it's been, this possibility is being massively constrained and this is happening very, very rapidly. And to the extent that this is happening on this kind of authoritarian political culture is coming from the top and sending out certain signals, this is something that is impacting every kind of criticism. So there is a valorization of hierarchy and authority at every level. So it becomes that much more difficult to fight battles around caste, for example. It's becoming that much more difficult to take up battles around gender, for example. It's becoming difficult at every level. So I just want to emphasize that the university or the college has been a site of tension like every other site in society, and as a site of tension, that is, I think, what we need to hold on to, because that site of tension is also the condition for imagining different kinds of universities. So in that sense, going beyond only being defensive. But I think to be able to do that, something has to be defended as well. Number two, I may have, in the way I talked about Duta, given the impression that I'm sort of saying that Duta has been sort of a heroic sort of teachers association. That's certainly just like with the university. The point is that Ramjas College Staff Association or Delhi University Teachers Association is, whether I like it or not, the only association I have. And to the extent that this association is under attack, it is not being allowed to function democratically, that people are feeling scared, and to the extent that Duta is also under attack. Duta, I am not equating to this organization or that organization. To the extent that Duta for me is also a site of struggle, where Duta, this organization as an association or as a union, if I'm seeing it being actually attacked and decimated, I don't know if I have any other option. And if there are other possibilities, I'd like to know, but I have to be able to try and protect it. While at the same time, and that is the point I began with, what is interesting about what's happening in Delhi University over the last 3 years is that apart from Duta and apart from DUSU, teachers, students and non-teaching staff have also been engaging in self-activity of a very different kind. which is pressurizing tuta, public meetings, slogans, songs, satires of a kind that have not come out in Delhi University, have actually come out from the ranks of a teacher's agitation. This is not to heroize anything. This is not to romanticize something, but to say that this struggle that we're talking about, which has seen ebbs and flows, and right now, one is really catching at straws here. So when I'm saying that it's very nice to see a sense of mad revolt, I mean, I might be talking only on the basis of 3 or 4 teachers having said something, but I'm clutching at straws. I mean, anything that I'm seeing coming up and people saying that, okay, let's have a public meeting outside the arts faculty gate at 1:30 in the afternoon of 10th of April, जबकि गर्मी होगी, तो लगता है कि ठीक है, गर्मी होगी, लेकिन इससे जान मिलेगी. मतलब इतनी बेजानी की हालत हो गई है और ऐसा आलम हो गया है डर का कि उसमें जब इस तरह का when you begin to just come across something like this, you feel some life going through your veins again. So I'm without trying to but I must also say this about Duta, that there have been moments. There have been moments, for example, when Duta struggles have impacted on the material conditions of teachers' promotions and salaries, which I am not ashamed of. I mean, without that, I think whatever material conditions of life we have, or better working conditions that we got, it would simply not be there. And not only for teachers at Delhi University, but for teachers across the country. So I'm not trying to say, I mean, the Duta leadership failed the teachers' movement 2 years ago completely. I mean, they betrayed us. So I mean, I'm not sort of talking about Duta in an uncritical way, or the Duta leadership in uncritical ways. But I feel it is very important for us to acknowledge and recognize that, like with unions everywhere else, the Teachers Association is also under attack as an association. And that is the meaning of the Vice Chancellor declaring that the Duta is an illegal welfare association. I might hate people who are in the leadership in Duta at a certain moment in history. At the same time, the association is something that I have to look after. Because if I don't look after that association, then anyway I'm sort of powerless. But I'm really gone. So I think this tension between the association and looking at the association as a site also of struggle, and also acknowledging and seeing that there is self-activity of a different kind happening among teachers and students who are trying to pressurize Duta into doing this and into doing that, is equally important. And I think I ended by saying that the struggle of teachers in Delhi University, or the struggle of teachers anywhere, I don't see it succeeding even on the question of democracy unless it begins to connect up with the outside. That's what I ended with. Okay, I don't see the possibility of this coming from within Duta. I mean, that's unfortunate, but it's true. As far as I know, even at the peak of Duta-led struggles, this never happened. Right? So I'm not seeing that possibility, but I also can see that unless it happens, okay, whatever is happening, the transformation that we are seeing happen at Delhi University, or the fight for democracy within Delhi University, is simply not going to succeed. And to be honest, I don't know how this is to be done. But I absolutely see the need for solidarity, which is why I felt it so important to come and speak, even though I didn't want to speak. But I felt it's important to go and speak at every possible fora. Because we have to find ways of being able to answer Anjaya's question. We have to find, I don't know anymore. I really don't know anymore how do we build up a credible enough opposition. I don't know. I really don't have any answers. But I really want to find answers. And let the answers come from all of us. This is not about Delhi University teachers, just like what is happening in Narmada is not only about or Maruti, is not only about Maruti workers. I mean, I just wish there could be a way in which the Delhi University Students' Union or the DUKU or the Duta could actually begin to solidarize with Maruti workers. Absolutely. But how do we do it? I mean, all I can see is individual groups within teachers and students sort of solidarizing. That is happening at some level. But how an association can do it is I don't have an answer to that question, but I see the tremendous need for this. This kind of networking, another kind of networking that has to happen. Absolutely, I agree with that completely. There was something else, but...
मधुरेश, मैं आपसे शुरू करना चाहूँगा। मुझे ये बात बहुत दिलचस्प लगी कि आपने कहा कि किसी में उम्मीद है कि ये किला भी ढह ही जाए, اور اس گیدرنگ میں مجھے یہ بات بہت دلچسپ لگی کہ چونکہ ہمارے پاس نیو لبرلزم کی ایک کڑی ہے جو باہر بھی ڈسٹرکشن کر رہی ہے، تو وہ یونیورسٹی کے بھیتر بھی ڈسٹرکشن کر رہی ہے، اور اس لیے یونیورسٹی کے بھیتر جو ہو رہا ہے اس کے لیے باہر کے لوگوں کو بولنے کی کوئی ضرورت نہیں۔ یہ ایکسپلین کرتا ہے کہ پچھلے 3 سال دلی یونیورسٹی کے بھیتر جو کچھ بھی ہو رہا ہے اس کو لے کر یونیورسٹی کے باہر ایک ایسی چپی ہے، ایک ایسی خاموشی ہے جو دل توڑ دینے والی ہے۔ اور اگر آپ یہ پوچھتے ہیں کہ ماروتی ورکرز کے ساتھ دلی یونیورسٹی کے ٹیچرز کیوں نہیں سالیڈیرٹی میں جاتے ہیں، تو ماروتی کے ورکرز کی اسٹرگل کو کیا اس آدھار پر خارج کر دیا جا سکتا ہے کہ وہ نندی گرام نہیں گئے تھے؟ میرے خیال میں اس طرح کے ترک کام نہیں کرتے۔ ہر اسٹرگل اور ہر کرائسس کا اپنا مہتو ہے اور اس کو سمجھا جانا چاہیے اس پرٹیکولر کانٹیکسٹ میں جس میں وہ ہو رہی ہے۔ دلی یونیورسٹی کی کرائسس کو سماج کیوں نہیں سمجھ پا رہا ہے اور سماج کیوں نہیں ریئیکٹ کر پا رہا ہے؟ کیوں دلی یونیورسٹی کے ٹیچرز کو یہ بتلایا جا رہا ہے کہ 6 پے کمیشن میں آپ کو کافی پیسہ مل گیا ہے اور اس لیے آپ کو شرمندہ ہونا چاہیے؟ میں بالکل نہیں مانتا کہ دلی یونیورسٹی کے ٹیچرز کو یا کہیں کے ٹیچرز کو شرمندہ ہونا چاہیے۔ وہ کچھ کام کر رہے ہیں جس کے لیے انہوں نے ایک جینے کا ٹھیک ٹھاک طریقہ اپنایا ہے اور اس کے لیے انہوں نے اسٹرگل کی ہے، وہ ڈوٹا کے ذریعے، دوسری ایجوکیشن کے ذریعے، اور اس اسٹرگل کے چلتے ایک بیٹر لیونگ کنڈیشن ہندوستان کے ٹیچرز کو ملا ہے۔ ورنا ناگارجن کی کویتا پڑھ لیجیے جو آج سے 60 سال پہلے ہندوستان کے ماسٹروں کو لے کر لکھی گئی۔ اگر آپ چاہتے ہیں کہ ہندوستان کے ماسٹر اسی حالت میں جئیں اور اسی حالت میں مریں، بہت اچھی بات ہے، لیکن میں صرف یہ کہنا چاہتا ہوں کہ آج اگر دلی یونیورسٹی اور آج اگر دوسرے ترکوں کو لا کر، وہ چاہے دلت ترک سے، میں کسی بھی ترک سے شرمندہ ہونے کو تیار نہیں، کسی بھی ترک سے۔ اگر مجھے یہ بتلایا جائے کہ یہ پریویلیج سائٹ تھا اور اس لیے اس کا ٹھہرنا انوارے تھا، میں سہمت نہیں ہوں، کیونکہ اس پریویلیج سائٹ کا کرٹیک اسی سائٹ سے نکلا اور اسی سائٹ کے لوگوں نے اسٹرگل کیا تھا، جیسا یہاں کہا گیا کہ یہ سائٹ آف ٹینشن ہے، اور آپ یہ نہیں کہہ سکتے ہیں کہ یہ پریویلیج سائٹ تھا اور اس کے بھیتر کے لوگ اس پریویلیج کو سیف گارڈ کرنے کی کوشش کر رہے تھے، اس کے بھیتر سے اس کا کرٹیک نہیں کر رہا۔ اس لیے آج میری سمجھ میں آیا کہ جو صبح ہم لوگ انڈین لیفٹ کی کرائسس کی بات کر رہے تھے، وہ کرائسس یہ ہے کہ وی آلویز ہیو اے تھیوری۔ ابھی پچھلے 10 سال سے ہمارے پاس تھیوری ہے، نیو لبرل اسالٹ کی تھیوری۔ اس لیے ہم نے یہ مان لیا ہے کہ انڈیویجول ریسسٹنسز کا کوئی مطلب نہیں ہے اور ان کو سپورٹ کرنے کا کوئی مطلب نہیں ہے، جب تک کہ ایک وائڈ بڑی سالیڈیرٹی نہیں بن جاتی ہے اور کوئی انتم اسالٹ نہیں ہوتا ہے، ٹھیک ہے۔ اور اس لیے لیٹ دلی یونیورسٹی کرمبل، لیٹ اٹ ڈائی۔ I think this is the message that I am getting from this hall, and it's very disturbing, very disturbing.
Use the mic.
Mic.
Please, Salah.
Important while we've been discussing,
So I think there is one important point which was made in the university struggles around universities in Europe, and that makes a sort of connecting point to what all of them were saying. That when we criticize the university the way it exists today, it doesn't mean that we want to go back to what used to exist. So the point is that how do we imagine a new university? That is the sort of crux of the struggle and the discussion we have. So thank you everyone, and I would like to request that there is a magazine called Critique of NSI where a lot of these issues have been published. If you want to have it, please take it from outside. Thank you.